everyone, and welcome to a new episode of Limited Time Only. I'm your host, Spencer, and I'm joined by my co-host, Drew. What's up, Drew?
Oh, not much. Just been uh, playing a bunch of Magic. Saw what movie did I see this weekend? The Shallows with Blake Lively.
Was it good?
I liked it. The climax is a little silly, but overall, it was actually one of the more enjoyable popcorn flicks I saw this summer. So I would recommend it.
Shark Attack.
Yep, pretty much. Yeah, it was.
The premise doesn't make sense to me, so I don't understand why she doesn't just get away. Why is she on that rock?
So she's just on an isolated beach, right? And then there's a shark in the water, and then the shark is trying to kill her. So she climbs up on the rock, and the shark isn't leaving her alone. So she has to try and figure out how to either get away from the shark or whatever. So the premise was fine to me. It was believable. Like I said, the climax was a little silly. It was a little.
How long does she spend the whole movie on the rock?
She probably spends I don't know, a third of the movie or something like that on the rock.
Interesting. So that's either got to be really good or really bad.
It was good. I liked it.
All right, fair enough. Go see Shark Attack movies. You can check out our sponsors at GameGrid. That's play at GameGrid.com, where you can check out some awesome content by Drew and others. You can also check out our sponsor at MTGO Traders. We post this podcast to Pure MTGO, has a great relationship with MTGO Traders, and I also buy all of my Magic Online cards from MTGO Traders, so check out Pure MTGO and MTGO Traders. Don't forget that you can support this show and all of the shows on the network directly by going to patreon.com/ccmtg and becoming a patron of Constructive Criticism. Every dollar helps. We really appreciate everything that we can get, and it really makes it so that we can do more awesome stuff. And it gives me help to get awesome sponsorships and things like that to show that there are people that are supporting us. And so check it out, and we would appreciate it. All right, so let's get right into this. So this week is going to be the last week of it's really the last week of when people care about Shadows of Innistrad before the new set comes in. And so this week we're going to talk about just saying goodbye to it and saying our thoughts on the format and things like that. Let's dive right into this. So first thing we do every week on this podcast is do what we call picks 2 through 3. We need a better name. I called it pick 2 at the beginning. It should just be called pick 2, but we really do picks 2 and 3. But we're gonna do pick 2, where we've already picked a card, and we're gonna talk about what we would pick picks 2 and 3 and why we would pick them. Going a little bit more in depth in the Crackback segment. And this segment is brought to you by Magic Drafter and 5-Color Combo. Every week on the show, we use the app on my iPhone called Magic Drafter to draft these packs. I use this app every day. I really do like it. It's by 5-Color Combo. You can check them out at 5colorcombo.com, and then looking up both on your iPhone or on your Android, Magic Drafter in the App Store. So, that being said, let's see what we pick up here. So our first pack was a little not that great, and we ended up picking up a Fiery Temper. Are you ready to decide what to take from here?
Yep. Let's take the next one. Fire Temper is not too bad. I'm not really sad if I first pick up Fiery Temper.
No, the rest of the pack was garbage, though. So I guess that means that we got the good end right, because then we didn't have to get past the pack we got.
Yep, pretty much.
Yeah. All right, so our first card out of this pack that we could take is Gustav Aristocrats.
Yeah, I'm going to be flipping around and trying to see what else I have to pick besides just a mediocre red creature.
We have Catalog, Reduced Ashes. It's moving to the front, but I'm sad. Vampire Noble, Expose Evil, Pyrehound. I probably.
Yeah, I mean, Pyrehound is. I have drafted the spells deck before, and Pyrehound is obviously one of the best cards in the spells deck. But The problem is it's only really good in that deck.
Yeah.
It's going to be a pretty mediocre creature in most other red decks.
True Faith Sensor is next. How far up has that moved up your list?
A lot, actually. Every time I've played with or against True Face Sensor, it constantly impresses me, even when it's not on a human. So I could see myself moving this to the front of the pack pretty easily. Even though Fiery Temper and True Face Sensor generally don't go in the same decks together. Again, Fiery Temper was only our first pick, so nothing wrong with taking a True Face Sensor and kind of just hedging where we're at.
Explosive Apparatus, Shard of Broken Glass, Arms of the Vein. This pack is bad.
Yeah.
Mystifying Glass, Forsaken Sanctuary, and Erlic's Kindred.
Yeah, this pack is pretty bad. So
I think it's either Erlic's Kindred, True Fifth Sensor, or Reduced Ashes.
Yeah, I think I'd rather take like a True Face Sensor. Which one is the Kindred again?
It's the 3/2 trample werewolf that you can give a creature wolf creature indestructible.
Yeah, I think I like taking Sensor here. I don't think the wolf or the removal spell are particularly great. I could see the justification for taking either one since we already have a red card and those are two decent cards. But
I'd rather take a red card. Only because I want my pack 2 to look good because my first pack is looking pretty bad. And that could really help me with that.
Yeah, I just again, like I said, early in the draft, I don't if I don't see like a good reason to commit to a color, I would rather just hedge and just take what I think the better card is, and I definitely think Sensor is the better card out of those. So
Alright, so I take Reduce, you take Sensor. Our next picks we have Hinterland Logger. That card's moved up a lot for me. Twins of Mara State, Sanitarium Skeleton, Sanguier Mage, Unruly Mob, Fiery Temper, Stormkirk Mentor, sorry about that. Gloom Widow. Oh, sorry, I skipped Gone Missing. So Gone Missing, Gloom Widow, Tooth Collector, Erdwald Illuminator, and Thing in the Ice.
This is a much better pack than the previous two. Well, we didn't talk about the first one, but I'm assuming it's better than the first pack we opened.
It is better than the first pack.
But this pack is quite good. There's still some very good cards in here. Yeah, this is actually I think this is actually a really interesting pick at this point. We know there's a Pyrehound in the pack we just passed. There's a low chance the Pyrehound wheels. Not high, but there's a chance it wheels. So I think I like taking either Thing in the Ice or Fiery Temper. Yep,
that's exactly my thought also.
I think if you think to yourself, all right, I can really make the blue-red spells deck really work in this draft, then I would take Thing in the Ice. If you are not quite as comfortable making that kind of jump into an archetype, or kind of thinking I'm going to try and push myself into an archetype a little bit harder, I can definitely see taking Fiery Temper. I mean, Fiery Temper will be great in any red deck, and even if you do end up in blue-red spells, you won't be that sad. Well, you'll be pretty sad you pass the Thing in the Ice if you do end up in blue-red spells. So.
Oh yeah, I think so too. I think the Thing in the Ice, I think that it's actually hard because I think that you could take that Fiery Temper and just be locked in as like the red drafter of the deck, and maybe you end up in a red white deck, maybe you end up in a red green deck, maybe you end up in a red blue deck. But the safe pick is certainly. I think that a lot of people would see Thing in the Ice as, oh, this is a tell, I need to be blue-red spells. But it's like, come on, man. Like, there's a rare and a common taken out of this pack. They could have easily taken any rare and any, like, you're in pick 3, so you're not to the point where you're really getting signals yet. You're getting to the point where you're making important decisions. And I think that this is a juncture in your draft.
Sure. And there is also some merit to gambling some of your early picks to go for like how good is a payoff versus maybe losing potentially a decent pick for your deck. And to me, I think Thing in the Ice is probably strong enough in the blue-red spells deck that it's worth taking a small gamble here to take a card like that to gamble that you can end up in the blue-red deck. And again, you want to stay. You don't want to just take Thing in the Ice and think to yourself, okay, I'm locked into blue-red spells. I'm just going to take all the blue and red cards, because obviously, if you get a couple packs down the line, you pick up a pack and you go, well, there's no blue or red cards in this pack. You may need to think to yourself, I probably need to jump ship at this point. I actually had this happen. We were doing a cube draft yesterday at Aaron's house, and this is a good example of what I'm talking about. Where, so I opened my pack. It's not a very good pack, like very, very mediocre. I tanked for a minute on Thalia versus Hollow Fountain. I took Hollow Fountain, kind of a boring pick, and Aaron passed me Shackles, Vidalcan Shackles. So I'm thinking to myself, oh, okay, I can go blue, like some sort of blue deck, right? And then I get passed an Augur. And then some other blue cards. So I'm like, yeah, it looks like there's probably a blue control deck I can set up. And then the next pack, there's no blue cards, but there's a Sulfuric Vortex. So I'm like, well, I'll just take Vortex and hedge, right? Because I can take Vortex. Obviously, the payoff is fine. It's low. And then I end up just taking every single red card and end up in mono red. And that, I think, is the kind of thing you can do with Thing in the Ice, right? You take Thing in the Ice. You are giving up a little bit, a value, because you're giving up Fire Temper. Yeah, exactly. It's not just a pack with just Thing in the Ice and nothing else. You are giving it up. But I like that sometimes you want to gamble and take a powerful card and try and go that way, and then end up with a more powerful deck, possibly in the long run. It's not guaranteed. You may end up being like, well, I ended up in green-white Delirium because the guy to my right was taking all the blue and red cards, and they just happened to pass a pack that had Thing in the Ice and Fire Temper, and I got cut. But that's where paying attention to what cards are in the pack is important.
Awesome. Yeah, I think that I couldn't have said it better, so I won't say anything additionally. Let's move on to our next segment. We're going to talk about this week. So every week on the show, we talk about our biggest movers in a format, week to week. This week, we're just going to say overall, what was your biggest mover from day one to now in this format, Drew?
True Faith Sensor. Interestingly enough, since we talked about that card.
I have two. I have True Faith Sensor is one, and then I think that Throttle is two.
Yeah, Throttle just ended up being a really, really weak.
It's funny because I don't think that Reduced to Ashes is as bad as Throttle is. And they're the same card.
It may be that because it may just be that.
Maybe it's because you're lower to the ground in red. So just yeah.
Yeah, it also Reduced to Ashes is like a little bit better in some of Red's archetypes. Specifically, we were just talking about blue-red spells. Like Reduced to Ashes it's not a great removal spell, but it's still fine, and it is a spell. So you can get it with what's the card called that you flip 5 cards and you put an instant and sorcery or 2 in your hand or whatever. Pieces of the Puzzle. You can get it with Pieces of the Puzzle. It triggers your Pyre Hounds. It triggers a Thing in the Ice if you have a Thing in the Ice. Whereas Throttle just like doesn't do anything, right? It just is like, well, I'm just a 5 mana -4/-4, which is okay, but it's not like exciting, and certainly it just not necessarily the most powerful removal spell. Censor for sure was a card that when the set first came out, I thought to myself, yeah, it's decent, in a humans deck or whatever, but I find even when the card's equipped to non-human creatures, it's still quite good.
I tried every equipment in this set, by the way, I'm pretty sure.
Okay, I have not played with like Slayer's Plate, but every time I've had it played versus me, the opponent just loses because they just lose so much tempo. Playing the card, putting it on a creature.
Oh, really? You don't like Slayer's Plate?
No, I don't. It's just so expensive for what for equipping your creature. If you're trading it all, obviously, and the game's going really long, and you have a ton of mana, then it's probably fine. But if the games are playing out and you're not going to have a lot of time to be able to do anything with it, one bounce spell, one removal spell just like sets you back so far. It can be really hard for you to catch back up.
Did you play a lot of Neglected Heirloom in this format?
I did play it once or twice. I didn't see it as much as I would. I do like Neglected Heirloom a lot. I think it's just so cheap that
Yeah.
the payoff is great. So
I think True Face Sensor did work in this format, and I think it made certain cards and certain archetypes a little bit better. Like that Green White Humans deck turned out to be really good, and I think that it was almost entirely on the back of True Face Sensor.
yeah, I mean, Sensor, yes, Sensor is pretty great. Yeah, like I said, I was surprised at how good the card was. Every time either I played the card or had the card played against me, I was like, man, this card is doing much better than I initially anticipated. So
Let's get right into the training rounds this week, which is just goodbye to SOI. And um, so Drew, what did you feel? How did you feel about the format as a whole? We'll get into the special question at the end that I'll ask you, but how did you feel from beginning to end about the format?
I liked the format overall. Um, it was it wasn't really like a memorable format for me. But it wasn't too boring, I don't think, is how I would describe it. So
I was certainly still having fun when I chose to draft it.
yeah, I mean, and I just love playing, limited Magic. So anytime I draft it, I like it. But yeah, comparing it to say the original Innistrad, I don't think it's anywhere quite as good as the original Innistrad. But I still thought it was a decent limited format. There was some fun synergies and things like that. Um, but yeah, it was
I
okay.
never got to play with
Just
a
not
Wolf of
memorable.
Devil's Breach, and that makes me sad.
I did.
Was
It
it great?
Yes, it was awesome.
That card is like the mythic that avoided. I never even saw it played with or against one.
Yep, I had it in a deck with several madness spells, and every time I attacked with it, I was discarding madness spells, and I'm like, this is awesome.
Oh man, that makes me feel happy inside that somebody got to do it. What do you? Let's get into like what we felt while drafting it. So at the beginning of the format, I won my pre-release. I did a bunch of testing for Pro Tour drafts where I was just like draft, 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 and it was so fun. I loved the beginning of this format. I found unlocking this format to be super fun. Like everything pre Pro Tour for this format. I know that that's like for a lot of people that's like not a lot, but for me it was like 7 drafts and a couple pre-releases, and it was a lot of fun. It slowly tapered off. I think that I slowly got more and more bored. Um, I didn't. I It felt like a very interesting mix between like archetype drafting and like not archetype drafting. There are people who have very differing opinions of this format still. Matt Kling was going to be on the podcast this week. He wasn't able to make it, but for him, he thinks that Green Red Werewolves is the best deck, and he's gone. He's like won his last something like 8/8/4s, and he's been doing nothing but drafting that deck. So, and then there are people like LSV who think that you actually just can't afford to play 2 drops in this format. That they're bad. So it's there are differing formats, differing opinions of this format, and that's still interesting. But I find that you're not really that rewarded for either thoughts on the format.
um, no, I mean, in terms of archetypes, I have found that again, basically, I just like to draft whatever I think is open, and I know
That's my
that's
thought too.
it's really generic limited vice. It's like, you just draft whatever's being passed to you, but really, like, there are very powerful decks in this format. I've actually drafted White Weenie twice, and gone 6-0 with White Weenie. Which is something you don't really like. Is that an archetype? But like, it happens, right? Like, if no one else is touching white cards, you just end up with all the efficient white creatures. I pick up like an Always Watching in both drafts. A couple high quality removal spells like Angelic Purge, and yeah, it's pretty easy to win with those decks. I've also drafted the blue red spells deck, gone 3-0 with that. Drafted a couple Delirium decks, gone undefeated with those. And every time I was just like, okay, like, basically what happens is I open my pack, and I look at it like I drafted a green white delirium deck, and the first pack was Descend Upon the Sinful, because I'm like, well, this is just a powerful card. I'll just take it. And then I was kind of bouncing around between like black and green and white, and then it ended up green and white was just the most open colors. Had a great deck, 3-0'd with that deck. I mean, really, it was just like every time I was getting past stuff, I would just be like, what am I getting past? Okay, let's take that, and then let's just go into it. Because I think there are powerful archetypes, and you get rewarded for drafting whatever the archetype is. And I don't
And
think.
and I think that it's important to note that can be. I think that just drafting the open I think that you're right. I think drafting the open archetype is what's important. I don't really pay attention to it's. I'm not going to cut a Ghoul's Color Apprentice from my deck. I don't care what anyone says about 2-drops. I don't care. Like, it's just, I'm not, it's this efficient card that, like, fits into my black-white deck, and I'm not going to just cut it for, like, a 4-drop that's more powerful because I think the format's slow. Because I don't think that about this format. I think that this format is, like, I don't think that way about this format. And I think that Drew is exactly right, that you should just be drafting your decks the way that they want to be drafted, and that you'll be rewarded for that rather than trying to get it cute.
Yeah, and like you said, knowledge of archetypes is good. And there may be archetypes that exist that you aren't even aware of. Like I said, like White Weenie, and that's kind of more. I mean, even when that's the exception rather than the rule, it's not bad to be cognizant of that. Like being like, oh, like all like because what happened with one of my White Weenie drafts was I took an Always Watching. I got past like some other white card, took the white card, and then I got past third pick Veteran Cathar. So I took Veteran Cathar thinking, well, I can just go green white humans, right? I think I only ended up with like 3 green cards total. But I mean, white was just like flowing, right? I'm just constantly picking up white. I'm passing Dauntless Cathars, but I still ended up with like 3 in my deck. And, like, just because I took a Veteran Cathar doesn't mean I have to be green-white. It just means that I have a Veteran Cathar, and if there's more green cards, then I can go into green. But if there's only white cards, then and I'm the only white drafter at the table, then why would I not draft a deck like that? And I really think that's where you can really really get rewarded in a draft and end up with some decks that are really at the ceiling. And the higher quality of drafters you end up drafting with, the less and less this becomes true. The more often you really do have to start like figuring out, I've got maybe 24, 25 cards for my deck because something went wrong in the draft, and I really have to make these really crucial decisions on what cards to play, as opposed to having this giant plethora of cards. I think I ended up not playing Puncturing Light main deck in that white deck. But anyways, back to the point is that like, yeah, I do think that knowing archetypes is good. When you're drafting Delirium, for example, you really want like Vessel of Nascency, for example. But the question is, can you wheel Vessel of Nascency? Because I've wheeled those in Delirium drafts before. So you can kind of make that decision, like, can I take just a good card for my deck and then wheel the Vessel of Nascency? And sometimes that's true. And sometimes I'm not. Sometimes you're just like, I'm just going to slam a Vessel of Nascency no matter what, right? Like, I already have good creatures. I already have good removal spells. I'm just taking a Vessel of Nascency no matter what's happening. And so really that's really where, like, knowing, all right, what do I need for this deck to work? What do I need for this archetype to pay off for me? And really figuring that out. And overall, I like having a format that does reward you for that kind of knowledge and for being able to get an edge over the other drafters. But like you said, it's also a lot of fun just figuring out a format as well. Just like sitting down and figuring out, all right, what cards are better or worse than I initially thought whenever I was drafting.
Let's talk about what we drafted, how we drafted the format in a little bit, get a little bit in depth. Drew, what was your most drafted color?
White.
Interesting. Interesting.
White, pretty easily. And then probably red after that, I think. But not together. I never drafted like red, white together. But yeah, I think it was white and then red.
Interesting. I was green and it wasn't close for me.
Yeah, green's pretty good. It has, obviously a great plethora of commons available to it.
I think that green is the consensus best color.
Sure, and I can definitely see that pretty easily.
I think that it has the most. I mean, it's so funny because like if you asked us, about that fight card in Battle for Zendikar, it was like, oh, that card's unplayable, like herp derp derp, right? And then we get to this format and they give us a better version of this is whatever. Right? They give us Rabid Bite, and Rabid Bite just turns out to be
Are you comparing Rabbit Bite to a natural aggression from Battle for Zendikar?
well. So that's the easy comparison that I think people made at the beginning. They forgot how good fight cards were, and it's not even a fight card. I was comparing it to what's it called? It's in Oath of the Gatewatch. It's
Uh,
Nissa's Judgment.
well, sure, but Nissa's Judgment is kind of. Oh, you mean in terms of how it?
How it works.
Right, because it's not an actual fight card; it's the deal.
Yeah.
Okay, sure. I was gonna say, I'm like, well, Nissa's Judgment is closer to a bomb than like a removal spell, so.
That's true. I'm just saying that like a souped down version of that card turns out to be great.
Yeah, I mean the thing is the easiest way to think why it's so great is because if you have a 3/3 and your opponent has a 3/3, you can kill it, and
Right.
you don't trade. So
Yeah, a huge fan of Rabid Bite, things like that. The format overall was just so great. I remember the beginning of the format wondering if do I cut Rabid Bites or Murderous Compulsions? Looking back on that, that's stupid. I know which one I should have been cutting. But it was
well, why not play both?
because I had too many, brah. I had 3 Murderous Compulsion in one of my draft decks,
Okay, all right.
and double Deadweight or something.
Yeah, that's quite a few. Oh, okay, this is back to Eternal Masters. I know we're talking about shadows, but so we actually had a little bit of this discussion. How many crit apes would you play in an Eternal Masters?
6.
We were pushing up to like 12 or something.
6. I would play 6.
Oh, I would snap play 8 easy.
I don't know if I would play 8. Anyway.
Anyways, back to the shadows.
But yeah, I think that green was my most drafted color by a lot. I think that I drafted green white a lot. I drafted green black a lot. I drafted green red some amount of the time. I did try drafting green blue. Green black was my most drafted deck by a significant margin. Um, I think that if the format had not evolved where people were trying to draft the green white cards for green white delirium, then I think green black would have been the best deck. Um, but I think that green overall was the best color, and it's the color that I ended up drafting the most. What was your favorite deck to draft? I just said mine. Mine was green black.
Um, I only drafted it once, but I really loved the blue red spells deck I drafted.
Okay.
Because it's doing the most quote unquote like fun things
thing.
to do in Magic. Like one time I copied a pour over the pages with Sky Splash. So it's like
Mhm.
drawing 6 cards. I mean that feels really good to draw 6 cards in Magic. So I loved that. Just removal spells, making a gigantic creature. I think I had like an 8/9 Pyre Hound in a game once. So I mean, in terms of like actual like fun, that deck was the most fun, and it was powerful as well. So that was definitely the deck that I was surprised at how much I liked the deck, because I talked about it before, where I was like, blue red spells is a thing, you can do it kind of, but I don't know how it'll work out. And then I drafted the deck, and I was like, holy cow, this is sweet. I mean, granted, I had like mythics and rares and like uncommons that you may not just get a lot of times in drafts, but when it does come together, it was pretty awesome. So,
What was your least favorite deck to draft?
uh, hmm. Honestly, probably like red black vampire.
That was mine too. I hated playing that deck.
Yeah, which was interesting because I really liked Madness a lot, and it was a little nostalgic doing things like I remember I had some games where I had Ravenous Bloodseeker and Incorrigible Use, and I'm like, man, this feels like, old blue-green Madness with Wild Mongrel or Aquamoeba and Arrogant Worm or Wild Mongrel, Arrogant Worm, whatever. But it just like, if you didn't have the really explosive starts, I just felt like the deck was just kind of like just a medium
So
limited
bad. It
deck.
felt so bad every time I played it.
Yeah, you're just like, I just have some mediocre creatures and some okay removal, and I'm hoping maybe I can attack for enough damage to kill you, kind of a thing. So yeah, it certainly seemed like the most volatile deck, right? It was a deck that had starts that were nearly unbeatable, and then it had games where you were just like, I'm just not doing anything exciting in any sense of the word. I'm just playing random creatures, and it's usually not
It
enough to win
There
a
was
game.
just the synergies weren't quite as good as I wanted them to be, and then like my opponent could just blank what I was doing so easily with just like a Mulgraf Scavenger, right? And just like, oh well, now they had a 2 mana card that stopped me.
Yeah, I mean, or even imagine something as simple as like the start I was talking about. If you go Ravenous Bloodseeker in incredible use, and they just go, oh, I'll just Fiery Temper your guy or
Yeah,
Murder Compulsion your 4/3, and you're just like, am I just out of gas now at this point? Like,
yeah,
what do I do from here? So
yeah. I beat that deck a lot at low life too, where like they got me low, but it was like when like now I have a board and your a blazing fast start didn't really help you.
yeah.
That incremental advantage only got you so far. So, um, what was your most drafted uncommon?
Interesting question. Probably a white card.
You're supposed to check your Moto account beforehand, brah.
Well,
I guess that wouldn't actually help you.
well, no, I've drafted a little bit on Moto actually. If it's my most drafted uncommon, I think I did draft several incredible use in one draft. Uh, is it Town Gossipmonger? I don't know. I've drafted quite a few Town Gossipmongers though. Uh,
Is a card that I don't know that I actually have ever passed. And that's a Cursed Witch.
okay.
I had 2 drafts with 2 of them, 1 draft with 3 of them.
You had 3 Occur Switches in a
I did.
draft. That's quite good. Yeah, I don't know if I've drafted any Occur Switch. Maybe one.
Yeah, I don't think I ever passed that card.
Yeah, but I have drafted my fair share of Town Gossipmongers. So yeah, I'll go with Town Gossipmonger.
What was your most drafted common?
Most drafted common would be Angelic Purge.
Oh wow, really?
Well, again, are we talking like?
Well, literally the card that you drafted the most of.
All right. Well, let me pull that up and see.
Mine was really close between 2 cards. I was actually surprised at the second one. I'm sure it comes to nobody's surprise that the actual most drafted card for me was Aim High.
Yep, that is quite surprising. All right, I lied about. Interestingly enough, most drafted uncommon is still a 1/1 for 1 white, but it wasn't Town Gossipmonger.
What
Can you
was
guess
it?
what it was?
No?
Topplegeist.
Oh, that is interesting.
And then most drafted common is Devilthorn Fox. So boring, but
My most drafted common, I think to nobody's surprise was Aim High. I think that I love that card more than most by a lot.
yes, you seem to be absolutely enamored with Aim High. I'm surprised you haven't like asked it out to dinner yet, or.
I have. We've gone on a few dates. I love Aim High. They're the best. But the one that creeped up real close to it was actually Intrepid Provisioner.
Yeah, Intrepid Provisioners.
I think that it was one of those cards where it like was like, oh, I guess I'm taking this. I guess I'm taking this. I guess I'm taking this. I guess I'm taking this, and it just added up.
Yeah. I like Intrepid Provisioner more than Aim High, so
What?
I do. I mean, I like playing a 3/3 that lets me just like have my guy get huge and smash into them. Aim High was just always kind of eh. I mean, the the only combat trick I think I ended up really liking in this set was Strength of Arms, mostly because it's only 1 white mana, and a lot of times you're able to get like a 1/1 out of it, which is nice. So I like
Jace's
Strength of Arms.
Scrutiny, basically a combat trick.
Uh, that's the -4, -0 one, right? That
Yeah,
investigates. Yeah, I mean that's a combat trick, sure.
I like that card.
Yeah, it's okay. I still like Strength of Arms a little bit better though. So
Interesting. We have very differing opinions. I think that it's interesting that you, me, and Matt all have differing opinions on this format and what we like and what we don't like. So that's good for the format, I think. That's good for the format. So if we were to look back on this in in a in 6 months or in 2 years, and I had a box of Shadows of Innistrad and said, Drew, let's draft. Would you make it a point to do that?
um, I'm kind of indifferent.
I
I
would
think.
not. I would be like, I'm good, man. Like,
Yeah.
got something better to do on a Saturday afternoon. Which is sad.
Yeah, it's all right. I mean, maybe Eldritch Moon will do something to. I don't know. Like I said, I don't really follow this kind of stuff. Is Eldritch Moon 1 and 2 shadows, or is it triple Eldritch Moon?
No, it's two shadows, one or
Okay.
two Eldritch Moons, one shadows, drafted
Two.
in that order.
Okay. All right. So we're still gonna have a little bit of shadows with Eldritch Moon. So
Yeah.
maybe Eldritch Moon will be a pretty sweet set to draft. We'll just have to see.
But overall, I thought this format was fun. It's not like one that I'm going to go out of my way to in 6 years to draft again. But I think that, I'll look back on my relationship with Aim High with a small smile on my face. And, it's no Saddleback Lagak, but
Well, Saddleback Lagak is much better than Aim High.
that's true. That card is the best. Um, uh, I'm surprised that you didn't try and. I mean, it's no Stormkirk Mentor.
Hey man, that guy, it's the exact same amount of power and toughness for the exact same amount of mana. So
Yeah, I don't know if that matters. Is there any cards that is there a deck that if you had a chance to draft this weekend, would you do it just to get in one more?
I think I'm actually gonna go and draft probably a Shadows draft or two on Magic Online when we're done with the podcast. So
Oh, there you go. Are you excited about it? Are you feeling different about it?
I'm fine with it. It's funny because I really like Eternal Masters draft a lot, and I would almost rather do an Eternal Masters draft online, but the problem is that like I am still a little bit aware of what the value of cards is because I like to try and get a little bit of value out of it, and it is really bad to open Eternal Masters packs online. I was not aware that like I think there's only two cards worth more than $10 that aren't foil. Um, which is Force of Will and Wasteland, because even Jace the Mind Sculptor is like a $9 or 9 ticks or whatever. Um, so it's way fun. It's a blast to draft, but it's pretty hard to justify 25 ticks or whatever.
Oh, what card will you remember the most from this set, Drew? That gave you like the most absurd wins?
The most absurd wins, or
What?
just
It's
like,
Westvale Abbey for me.
yeah, I don't think I've ever flipped a Westvale Abbey or even activated it a couple times. I had one in, I think, a sealed deck. Handwar Militia Captain was pretty absurd every time I played it or played against it.
I lost to a really big Altered Ego once. That was annoying.
That's the clone card, right?
Yeah.
What did they clone?
I don't know. It was like a 4/4 that they made an 8/8, and I was like, oh well, that's huge. That's a big guy. Was there anything that you were wrong about in this format or right about in this format?
Let's see.
I think that I was right about Delirium being good week one.
Oh, sure, yeah. Delirium was certainly much better than I thought. I thought Delirium was just going to be like cards were incidentally having Delirium. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like Moreland Drifter is a great example of what I initially thought Delirium was going to be like. It's a 2/2 for 2. I'll play it, and then hey, maybe it gets flying later in the game, and then Delirium ended up being an actual archetype and that kind of a thing. I think werewolves were much worse than I initially anticipated. Which I know Matt's claiming that werewolves are great, but I just found that werewolves were not very good. It just seemed like you just were giving up way too much. Like it. Werewolf seems like a deck. If you try and play the game normally, your creatures are mediocre for the most part. But if you try and play the werewolf part of the game, you can get punished really badly for it. So I just was like, werewolves just did not impress me, and there was not like did not seem like there was any really big payoffs to being werewolves for me. So.
All right. Well, I think that will do it for this week. Where can people find you, Drew?
I am on Twitter at MTGDrew, and I'm also on Facebook, Andrew Walden.
You can find me on Twitter at SpencerH. You can find me on Facebook at Spencer Stephen Howland. You can find the podcast every week on PureMTGO.com, YouTube.com, MTGOTraders.com, 5colorcombo.com, and soon play at GameGrid.com, and MTGCast.com. You can also follow the podcast on Twitter at LTOMTG, or like us on Facebook at Limit Time Only. Don't forget that you can check out the Constructive Criticism Facebook group. A lot of people posting their drafts lately, and it's fun. We like talking about drafts. We like talking about how you build your decks, and we love talking to you guys. Shout-outs this week, Drew.
Shout out to Zach Cool. He won the Eternal Masters PPTQ. I believe there was 64 players. I did not get to attend. I had to work all day. But he was in, I believe it was, he got first. Old guy that played with Travis and Aaron and Sammy and those guys. And then Aaron got third and Sammy got second. So they kind of swept up that tournament pretty well.
Sweet. Huge shout out to Matt Kling for agreeing to come on today. Sorry that there were some issues, but cool guy. Got a draft with him this week. I love talking to people who have different opinions of formats than me, because I don't think that there's always necessarily right or wrong. I think that there can be, but I think in this instant, I do think that this format is one that was interesting enough that you could have differing opinions. It's too bad it just wasn't a little more interesting. Thank you, everybody, for listening, and we'll see you guys all next week.
See you guys next week.